me.
The outside perception of Ludington is extremely wealthy because what you see is the lakefront and the waterfront homes and the condominiums and all of that. But the reality is we're about 55% free and reduced lunch. And so as a result, do we have parents who are out buying laptops for their children? No. In fact, we're having a hard time buying football shoes or soccer cleats for the students that are on those deals. Do we have band uniforms that are new? No, they're 20 years old. And our best bus is about a 2003, and that kind of shows you the situation that we're in.
I had been telling our school principal, we have got to do something to get technology in these classrooms. I will collect pop cans door to door if I have to raise money to get some type of technology in our classrooms. We really don't have a lot at our lower elementary buildings.
Tom Johnson of our Mason Lake Oceana ISD and actually mentioned it to Mary Jo tomorrow, who is our tech director here at the Ludington schools, and they had a conversation and said, you know, what do you think about an iPad type tablet at a kindergarten or a first grade or a second grade?
A laptop in the hands of a kindergartner would keep me up at night. It's too fragile. I think we can do everything that they need to do or want to do on a tablet. They're great for little fingers. You know, just the fact that you touch something instead of having to move a mouse, they're just a great device for a kid.
When she told me about the idea, I first thought she was a little bit nuts. I thought, is she sure that she wants to put iPads in second grade? Why not give them to our high schoolers?
iPads are amazing. They're like these tiny computers that you can use for anything. We took our iPad home and we got to show our brothers and our sisters.
I'm going to show my wiki off, I'm going to show my password, my username, and I'm going to show off all my tricks.
Well, with iPads, we got to stick them on our top of our desk. And when she say, okay, pick a book, you could just flip it open, press a button called your home button, because it would take you to your home page, and you just slide this little arrow, and then voila! All the magic happens.
Of all the kids, why would you try it at that level and not at the high school level? You know, they're preparing for college. What are you thinking? And then, you know, word got back that they were bringing them home, you know, and that's when my husband and I said, okay, we're going to take an active stance here. We are not in favor of this. And, you know, what was such a negative thing, I mean, you have to experience it to appreciate it. And even then, you still don't appreciate it. It's the most amazing teaching concept, piece of equipment, whatever you want to call it. It is going to be life-changing for the kids in the 21st century.
Some people were very apprehensive about giving 5-year-olds technology and, you know, why not the junior high and why not the upper elementary or the high school? And I say that it's obvious that kindergarten is the foundation. You have to start while they're young and expose them to this technology, and just because they're 5 and just because they're in kindergarten doesn't mean that they can't succeed using technology.
We see a lot of stalling in school districts, the larger school districts, because the layers of politics are overwhelming and they're paralyzing. And the beauty in Ludington is that 2 teachers turned a light on, a light that you couldn't deny. And that just cleared the way.
Kids have far more ability and aptitude than we give them credit for. It always amazes me when you look back at historical figures. You have people at the age of 15 who are kind of admirals in the Navy, or you know, or achieving extraordinary things in business. And I don't say that because I think we should go back to it, but there is always a risk, I think, of infantilizing people, of not seeing what they're really capable of. And young children are often very insightful and very practical, and people on the whole respond to the challenges that you present them. And what interests me is the technology is putting tools into the hands of people now, which they show a tremendous natural aptitude for.
Lincoln Elementary School District is a small bedroom community. We're approximately 4 square blocks. Over 90% of our students are receiving free and reduced lunch, which means we're very high in poverty. I think we all agree poverty matters, but because you are a person of poverty doesn't mean that you're limited forever. I truly believe the use of technology is more of an equalizer. It creates that level playing field for all of our students, because in most schools where you see a lot of technology, those are the school districts that have the high tax base. So when we make it available for our kids on a daily basis, we hope to decrease that gap, that achievement gap, but just as importantly as the achievement gap, that availability gap, where students have those resources so they can begin to implement it and use it.
If you have the core group of teachers that are willing to jump out front and work with other staff to make this happen, any school can do this. Even without one-to-one, it's still possible to do this. But it's that idea of bringing in the leaders and the people that have the desire to do this. And that's the big trick.
It wouldn't work without the collaboration, because there's no way, no offense, we'd sit around and hear someone talk about how to use a tablet and we just do it. We have to work it together at our own pace.
So it's the idea I can walk into a classroom and say, hey, I'm going to give you a tablet, I'm going to give you a document camera, and I'm not just going to say, hey, here's this latest technology I got a grant for and bought it. It's the idea that I can go in there and say, this is how you can use it to enhance your lessons.
We can preach to our staff all we want to. The importance of having kids being the digital natives that they are and working with the technology and multitasking. But when staff members can actually see, hear, and interact with their colleagues who are doing it, it carries a whole lot more weight than what we may think or say is a philosophy or theory.
I always tell my students, the things you're learning now, I've never had a chance to learn in school. And you're going to be so far beyond me. You're going to be creating and inventing and making websites and just going to have so many job opportunities I've never had because of the experience you're having today in this classroom.
It does mean a lot to my son, because other years he would say, oh, well, only 3 kids could use your computer at a time, certain days. He's like, and now I get to use mine every day. It's going to teach him more than I could probably teach him, because we don't have one at home.
Students are no longer just receptive to someone staying at the front of the classroom and just lecturing to them for the entire period. Kids like to get around, they like to move around, touch things, play with things, see the application. What other better way can you see the application than with the technology itself? It really presents real-world learning activities for our students. What we talk about, they're seeing in action, and they correlate that to what they see outside of the school hours.
It's sometimes difficult as a teacher to let go of that control. Teachers like to be in charge of what goes on in their classroom. You want to say, you're on page 2, do 1 through 7, that's the end. But giving them that autonomy, letting them do it on their own. I used to be like a big stickler about a quiet classroom, and I've learned that a quiet classroom is the boring classroom. Kids will probably sleep in a quiet classroom. So we need to be up and awake and communicating and talking and getting involved and getting engaged and not just sitting there. That's been a struggle for me as a teacher. Like, let them, it's okay if they're talking. They may be answering the questions. Let them have it, let them go. Using the document camera, the students come up and they play teacher. They show me and the rest of the class, this is how I solve this problem.
You can sketch, and then you go to solve the problem, and then if you want to go back, you go back to front writing.
And it just enhanced that idea of, in order to learn something, you have to be able to teach it well to someone else. It's just about exposing the kids to a different way to express their learning, like a different kind of book. It's a different way of doing something.
The thing is, they are, though, just tools. Technology, in the end, is just about the making and design of tools. If you go to a music cupboard full of instruments, they're just tools, but they won't themselves compose or play a symphony. It takes creative people to do that.
It doesn't replace the kinds of things that they would do with paper and scissors and crayons. It's just another media for them to express themselves, another media for them to share their stories, share their thoughts, interact with others.
And that's what we talk about at the end of the day. What'd you learn? What'd you do today that was different on your tablet? How are you going to take that into tomorrow? What are you going to do with what you've done? Not just, you know, oh, I played sketch. Well, what did you do on sketch? You know, what made it so meaningful for your learning today?
When it comes to assessments, using all this technology has made data collecting of assessments so much easier. The teacher doesn't have to take as much home to grade because the digital assessment grades it for them. The ability to do things such as tagging questions with standards that we're looking at, or just key concepts, and to go back at the end and even to be able to tag the students with different, you know, ability levels. We can now look at and say, well, we taught both of these concepts, and it automatically is giving us the data. This standard the kids are scoring 95% on, this standard they're scoring 45% on. We now know what skill needs to be retaught and revisited without necessarily beating the dead horse of that standard we're already hitting. And it's also allowing us to look at our students. Is there a group of students that's not getting the information compared to others? And then that way we can address different learning needs and different abilities.
A teacher can have access to a dashboard of progress and track each one of their students. So they can see every lesson, they can see every day who's succeeding, who's falling behind, who may need some more additional help. And it's not waiting till the end of the day. It's not waiting till the end of a grading period, and then we find out that little Johnny has fallen behind.
It's lowering frustration, it's raising engagement in class, and the students are more interested, where it's not the kid in the back of the class who just sits there and goes, well, I didn't get it, they don't care, so why I should just stop, to now they care about me because they're addressing what I'm struggling with now.
When students are engaged and they take ownership in the teaching and learning process, they are willing to try because they've got that confidence that I can, as opposed to doubting themselves. And that's all you really want.
I think you're going to be able to figure this stuff out all by yourself. So here's what I want you to do.
The first day of school, initially rolling out the iPads, was a little nerve-wracking because here I am handing 7-year-olds a really expensive device. And, you know, I'm a little nervous that they might be dropped, or those were the fears going through my head. It wasn't so much, you know, this is going to be great and how can I make this bigger than it is? It was more, you know, what are the logistical concerns that I have? I saw so much interaction today. I couldn't believe it. They were getting up out of their seats and helping each other and showing them, hey, I found this really cool app. Let me show you where it is on your iPad. Or they would look at their neighbor and say, I love what you're doing. Can you show me how you found that or how to play? And they were really helping each other out, and it was great.
We found Stack the States on there. We found we found PBS Kids on there. We found all this stuff. And then we show other people, like the other kids, like how to get onto that, like how, like if they wanted to see it, like your next door neighbor, they like will show you how to get onto it, so then you will always know how to get onto it.
I was worried that I was going to have a classroom a bunch of gamers and nobody was going to talk, but that's actually the opposite, because the kids actually really communicate with each other. They're teaching each other, they're working together as a team and wondering, hey, how did you do that? Or can you show me this? And hey, look at what I did. And their conversations, you know, even for 5-year-olds, are really neat because they are working together in a totally different way.
Astronaut, so yeah.
Take me to an astronaut. Okay, I'll take you to it on that. How did you get on that? Look what I'm on. You try and look for it. Oh gosh, you can't say all that.
If a student brings in a new resource, a new game, a new application, a new environment, that student may be teaching other students, and the teacher kind of becomes a collaborator in learning, which is actually a really interesting role for teachers. They're modeling what it feels like to be a learner. They're learning along with students, and the more we have teachers very comfortable in that role of learner as well as instructor or teacher, the better we'll be in this kind of new sort of technology-enabled learning environment.
At first, I just taught and then reinforced with the iPad, and then as the year went on and the kids increased their skills, I said, oh my gosh, this is a creation device. They're able to write on here. They're able to record their voices. I can take their stories and make class books. And it was really anything that you could do in the classroom. I thought about how am I going to use this on the iPad.
Which one did you go? Me?
You know, we are still doing traditional things. You know, kindergartners are still using paper and pencil and crayons. We're still looking at books that, you know, real hardcover books. I think just technology has just enhanced the learning because they're able to have more opportunities. With kindergarten, you know, they're still learning their name, they're still learning how to write their letters, and, you know, we're forming words and writing sentences. So at the beginning of the year, I really have the parent support with the blogging of their high frequency words. And then as the year goes on, at the end of the year, we were blogging in class because their skills had reached the point where they were able to form a sentence, you know, on the keyboard and type that up.
The fun run is tomorrow. I am so excited. I land over 100.
For 5-year-olds to be sitting in a group and having educational conversation about their writing or how they're using this math app to help them add or help them subtract is an awesome way, because, you know, if you just gave them a worksheet, they're not going to have any communication about that. They're not going to be excited about a worksheet. But this way, they're collaborating, they're working together, they're working as a team.
100 take away 70.
If I'm doing a small group with my reading group, I can rest assured to know that my students that are not with me working one-on-one are learning things the correct way, and I don't have to worry about them.
A lot of people talk about the look and the feel of the classroom will change, and in many cases it may look and feel very much the same, especially in young grades when students are actually and always have been very active learners. They have learning centers, they move around the classroom, they're working with each other, there's a lot of talk going on. That is the kind of environment that we would like to see at all levels.
And we are going to be completely surprised where this is going to take us, but it's definitely going to take us in a really good place. And it's a place that children will not be bored. They're not going to be bored. If left to their own devices, literally, they can actually show us where they're headed.
Initially, I was trying to think about how I could run this program and how they might be used in the classroom. And at first I just thought, okay, I can stick them in centers, I can use it for this small group time or this whole group time, and then it became really clear that this was going to be a device that I could use all day. So I tried to stay away from iPad time. I didn't want iPad time. I wanted the iPads to just be integrated into every subject, every area, whether it's looking up a word on our dictionary app or using it to annotate over PDFs and assignments or sending notes home. I wanted it to really be our resource for everything. I'm really excited to get them logged into our wiki for the first time. Our wiki is our classroom filing cabinet, and it has everything that our classroom is about on it. And so I'm looking forward to getting them introduced to that and seeing that there's this whole world out there that they can explore and that has all of their spelling words and vocabulary words and everything on it that they'll need to have a successful year. As a teacher, having iPads, it has really changed the way I teach. It's really made me reflect on how I teach, and it's made me want to engage my students as much as possible, because the iPad is such an engaging tool. I try to direct things there as often as I can, because if they're engaged, they're learning it much faster and in a much higher quality way. So it's really, really made me stop and reflect on how I teach, and it's made me become more of the backseat teacher. I'm not standing up in the front of the room all day, every day, directing. I get to just kind of sit back and let the learning happen after a few minutes of instruction, and then off they go.
This is an exciting time to be a teacher. And we see many teachers who have given more flexibility and more freedom to teach in this more authentic way, to do project-based learning, to work with small groups of students. It's not so much the technology knowledge that matters. If teachers are conversant with technology, that's great. But if you're a teacher who hasn't really used technology much in your own teaching, this will be an exciting time for you. If you take up a new role and a new identity, that you can be a learner too, that your students can also help teach.
If it was easier to connect with kids bringing ice cubes in the classroom or something, I don't care what it is, I would do it. The best teachers do it. But for goodness sakes, why would we tell a kid that the way you communicate, the way you collaborate, the way that you have critical thinking, and everything you do outside these walls you can't use in here. And then we ask them to adopt 21st century skills, which are the 4 C's. They do outside, they just don't inside. And so what happens is if we continue this, the percentage of learning that's taking place inside a school building will continue to shrink. The pendulum for learning will continue to be still. But we can choose to move that and get that curiosity to learn moving again by allowing them to do what they're doing outside our buildings already. They're already learning out there.
Throughout this year, I've had kids, if they want to bring in a device, they are allowed to, as long as it connects with their learning. They can't just play games on it.
When I first found out that they would be allowed to bring their own devices and using all this technology, I was nervous about letting my daughter bring my Kindle. Has my email, has my Facebook, so I was a little nervous about that part of it all, but it worked well. She's more excited about learning, which is definitely a bonus. She has struggled in the past, and this year I haven't seen any of that. It's been very positive.
I was going on my little Acer, and I was writing a script for my sock puppets. There was like a crayfish and a Madagascar Hessian cockroach, and then on the bottom I took a picture of my crayfish and then I put it on there.
Cool. Can I tell you what I eat?
Sure.
I eat dry cat food.
It is a creative tool, so whether they're doing art, telling digital stories, creating their own movies, incorporating their own photographs, whether they're using an application around mathematics or social science or language arts. I mean, there are so many technologies that lend to consistent learning.
And I was excited that we were able to do the sock puppets as well as taking the quiz on Edmodo. So it's nice to have an app that can be utilized on any device. And I think those types of apps will just make it more successful in the classroom because you can truly bring your own device.
I like trying different devices and different things on them. You can learn reading, writing, science, anything, almost anything.
I actually prefer when I can just jump from one group or one child to another to kind of individualize what their needs may be. Today with the science, I was editing on the Diary of a Crayfish blog to helping child log in, discussing, oh, you didn't save it, you didn't push the right button. So just a multi-focus with whatever that need was at the time.
I love technology. It's just a whole bigger level of learning.
We do Diary of a Crayfish sometimes on the computer. We just post it online and people get to read it on what the crayfish did today.
We need creativity in school, we need the arts in school, we need time to communicate, we need time to delve into projects and make them meaningful. Memorization, filling in bubble tests, hopefully will be a thing of the past. And where we're going is going to be a place where kids will be able to be co-learners, diving in deeply, making the work that they create meaningful, and hopefully their work will move the world to a better place.
Technology will definitely be part of your future, and in college you'll be using it a ton, and in your workplace. I'm just by nature I'm a large risk taker, and I am creative. I'm one of those teachers that if I have an idea that pops in my head, I'll just go full forth with it. And sometimes you're going to have bumps and bruises along the way, but for the most part, I've had an enormous amount of success with some of the risks that I've taken, especially in technology.
Hi, Mrs. Mount. How are you doing?
Hello, Lieutenant Governor. How are you?
Doing well.
Good. Today was our first Google Hangout, and the Google Hangout was completely new to me, so there was a little ounce of, I'm confident that I can do this. I just need to understand the nuances of the Google Hangout.
We did Google Hangout. It's just a little thing, kind of like Skype, but there could be more people on it. We talked to the Lieutenant Governor, and we all had questions to ask him, and mine was, how long is your work day?
Well, it varies depending on the day, but it's not unusual for me to start somewhere around 7:30 to 8 o'clock in the morning.
I was very pleased with the manners of the children, saying thank you for taking my question.
No 2 days are the same. We have a lot of variety, a lot of different things that happen. And, overall, it's a really fun job.
They're having their social studies benchmark assessment this afternoon, and hopefully some of those things will impact their understanding of Michigan government.
What has been your favorite bill to pass?
Oh, that one's really easy. My favorite bill was one that just passed a little while ago.
Sending iPads home with kindergartners was definitely a big fear that I had, but parents were really supportive, and it really incorporated some family time at home because the parents were excited to see what their kids were doing on the iPads.
It's a story that I wrote.
You wrote a story?
Yeah, let's see. See?
Oh my goodness. How do you write on there? Show me how you write on there.
I keep calling the wiki kind of a classroom window. The parents can get on the wiki from home and they can see through the windows of our classroom. There's pictures on there, there's videos on there. All of our blogs are on there. They can see what their kids are writing and learning about. They really get a good sense of what's happening in our classroom, and it is wonderful.
I can't believe he's already put a story on there, and they already have pictures on there, and they're writing the sentences and putting their spelling, and we're not going to have any paper notes come home anymore. It's all going to be on the iPad. That's crazy. And he's going to be able to show me right where to get to it, and he'll know before I will, but he'll teach me.
I'm going to have to kind of teach my mom a little about how to do some of the things, and I'm going to have to teach maybe my whole family how to get onto some of the apps. The cool thing is when you read a book, when you stop, it leaves off.
So you can go back to it?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's when you do either one, so if it's read along or I want to read, it still stops, even if it's read along.
Is that where the bookmark comes in?
Yeah, the bookmark comes in by itself, though.
Now your learning at home has changed completely. Instead of I don't want to do my homework, get out your flashcards. The kids are excited to take the iPads home and practice their skills, and the parents are excited to sit down and help them because it's not a struggle anymore. When I was selected to implement the iPads in the classroom, some of the other teachers were like, oh, wow, that sounds like a lot of work, or you're doing all this extra stuff. What's that like? And, I was very positive about it. And guys, you have to see this technology. You have to see what I'm doing in the classroom. And I think little by little, even people that aren't comfortable using computers in their lessons are saying, hey, can my kids come over and can you do a lesson with the iPads? And then the hunger has just really been excited. People are excited to use technology. So this year we were able to add another mobile lab for checkout, and the teachers are able to use that in their classroom.
Even the teachers that want to change, you have to help them understand how to change and then make them comfortable.
Boys and girls, now I'd like you to find your folder that has math. A lot of you still have math. All of yours in your math one.
I've had 2 experiences recently, and one of them is a veteran teacher, and she was scared to death. But they convinced her to take on this pilot. They need understanding, and they need help to get over the fear. There's courage about this. They'll look back. I said, you're going to look back at your career and realize you were the pioneers of this whole different way of learning that we finally busted up after 100 or 200 years.
I was a lot reluctant because I'm not, with a computer technology, I'm not very confident with it. I feel like I'm still learning, and honestly, the kids teach me a ton. They taught me how to change the background, the wallpaper. They taught me how to do that the second day because they knew that before I did. So they actually have taught me a lot.
There you go, good job.
As a teacher, it's changed how I teach because that's how I reinforce. I may not introduce a lesson that way, but it reinforces everything that we're doing in the classroom.
What are you looking for on the bottom of the
19.
19. There, I told you what to tell you.
We're working on addition, we're working on one-to-one counting. There's always that app in there that can reinforce that in a fun way. I was doing a sight word assessment in kindergarten. They needed to know 34 sight words. And as I was giving it, I was thinking, did I not remember how my class did last year? Because these kids are blowing me away. Out of 34, they're getting 33s, 34s, and I'm thinking, maybe I forgot. Maybe I forgot what it was like last year. And so I went and I asked our principal, can I get my last year's data? Can I get like my lip profile sheet, just like a printout of it? And so I counted, and it's beyond double. That's what I've told people. They're very confident. They're very confident in their reading. They're confident in their writing. And I haven't seen that confidence. And I feel like I owe it to the tablets because I didn't change anything else.
Let's do build a word. It says fish.
I don't have an iPad in my classroom and it makes me sad. I don't have an iPad in first grade. Last year I used my iPad for a lot more of my writing, and now it's a lot more on notebooks and stuff, so I don't really have all the stuff I used to have. It's like so different.
I feel the most sorry for the kids that Amber had last year that are second graders that are now in third grade, because they've had this just incredibly wonderful experience with their own device. And now they're going into a classroom that has 3 old computers. I just feel like somebody took away their toys. It just breaks my heart that we don't have the money to continue with what those kids had started.
My kiddos from last year, however, I think it'll be a challenge for them. They're really jumping backwards in time, and they've gone from having such an amazing opportunity right at their fingertips in the classroom and at home to having really nothing.
Schools have got to have this. I don't even know how to express that enough. It's our obligation, I think, as a society to bridge the gap in technology between kids that have the money to do it and kids that don't have the money to do it. And we've got to get this technology into their hands. And if you can start them at a kindergarten level having that technology, that's they're going to be all the further ahead when they hit the 21st century.
The one thing I want to make sure is that we don't simply think that we can take an old system and just layer on top technology. What you have to do is you have to peel it back and say, what is it we're trying to accomplish? How is it we're going to boost student outcomes with the effective application of technology? And then develop the strategy, and you involve everyone, that is the parents, the teachers, the principals, the leaders, and the students in that.
I often say that initiatives that are working in schools take great leaders. It takes someone who's willing to bring in the community. It takes someone who's willing to bring in the businesses in their community and certainly engage the students and the parents and really have a systematic change for what they're doing for their community.
I'm sorry to have to tell you, but we are nearly out of dollars in the Ludington area school system, as are most school districts. Our employees have had 7 no pay increases in the last 10 years. So everybody's doing what they can do, but for us to replace all those computers is probably not, actually probably is not, it's not going to happen. So what we're trying to do is find a way to update all of our equipment that's in this district. This orange box, if your home is $100,000, that's equivalent to a $25 additional tax. We've gone from being pretty skeptical and apprehensive to a lot of community members, not me, not school people, saying, we need a tech bond. That doesn't happen very often. And so we're actually finding ourselves working together, and a group of parents are kind of taking the lead and spreading the word quietly, and we're getting to that point where I think we're going to get ready to unveil this thing. So that's where it's all headed.
The Ludington School District is celebrating tonight after a technology proposal passed. More than 70% voted in favor of the millage.
what I'm advocating for education isn't a single model, it's a set of principles that can manifest themselves in all kinds of different sorts of practices. And they're evident already in the system, and the system is changing. The technologies are demanding change, and they're also facilitating the change too. And the change will come from the bottom up. The analogy I often think about here is that if you think of the history of rock and roll was not a government policy. You know, it wasn't that a group of cultural ministers sat together one day and listened to a briefing from a civil servant who had identified 3 chords he thought could be put into a multitude of different combinations and some clothes he thought could be appropriate, and said, I think we should launch a strategy here, Minister. Rock and roll bubbled up out of the culture from a change in sensibility, and also facilitated by technology. The electric guitar, notably an amplification. I mean, it's not coincidental that rock and roll didn't happen in the Elizabethan period. It just, they didn't have the technology for it. And technology often works that way. It works against the texture of the culture to create something fresh and new, and I think that's what's happening here. And it will bubble up from the bottom. And sensible governments will recognise it's going on and try and facilitate it and provide for it. But I just want to encourage people doing the work to get on and do it, and not wait for permission.